What up, my fellow dorks? It is the Turtle Dork here with a new recap and review for Game of Thrones Season 3, Episode 4. This one is called, I wrote it down, And Now His Watch Is Ended, directed by Alex Graves. I am the Turtle Dork, I said that in the beginning. This is the Disco Dork, and we are here to break this shit down.
Alex Graves, he did the last episode, right?
Shit, I have no idea.
God damn. You said
No, I said it was Benioff that directed.
So I want to say this is like the first episode that he's directed.
I think it is. It's the first time I've noticed his name. We could be wrong, but I know that he hasn't directed an episode in quite a while. If he did direct another one, if not, this is his first.
I think it's because this is the first time I remember hearing his name as far as these introductions.
Yeah.
And I just remarked that I just want to speak about that for a moment because we're going to get to bullet points of the episode, but just as a whole, as far as how it was directed, how it was shot, this is a really strong episode. Like absolutely. The cinematography, just the editing, the pacing, the build up to certain scenes that we're going to get to. Absolutely. I thought like this was a very strongly directed episode. And
this covers a lot. I think we have a little bit of every character in this particular episode. So let's go ahead and kick it off, man. So the opening of this episode starts with Jaime.
So we pick up right after the ending of the episode.
He gets his hand cut off, and he's on a horse, and they've tied his hand around his neck like a necklace. And I've kind of put here is what did I say his name was? Locke. Noah Taylor's character. His name is Locke. And he's with some other soldiers who are bannermen of the Boltons. And I just put Jaime being humiliated and tortured by Locke and his men. So basically, he falls off his horse, falls face first into the mud. And Brienne is looking on in concern as well. And so Locke comes over, and well, Jaime is requesting for water because he just feels he needs water. And one of the guys, he takes his water and dumps it on his head. And then after that, Locke gives him some water, but it's horse piss or something like that. And he's chugging it, and before he tells him what he's actually drinking, and he spits it back out. And then he pulls a sword from one of the soldiers, and he's trying to fend them off, and they're just kind of playing around with him. And it is kind of humiliating to watch that. And it's interesting because I go back to season 2 and those conversations and how I felt about Jaime during that time, how I felt he was so smug, and I just didn't like him as a character. But when you see these characters, whether you like them or not, and then they're put in such a predicament or such a situation where you start to sympathize for them, you start to, I don't know, you start to feel for them. And I felt bad for Jaime in this moment. I think that was really accentuated in this scene with those cutaways to see the reaction for Brienne. Because I think Brienne is kind of like us, the audience, watching that. It's just like we feel bad for him, and he doesn't deserve to be going through that, especially from these people. And I just thought it was just a good way to kind of open this episode from where we left off.
I like to play devil's advocate, but it's a testament because you're not wrong. Like it's a testament to the show and to the writers and to the actors involved that you can have someone that up until this moment, and you just remarked about your impressions of Jaime like in the previous seasons and things like that. Your impressions of this character up to this moment have been, this is a bad person. Yeah. He going back to episode 1 of season 1, he pushes Bran out the fucking windows. Exactly. He attempts to kill a child because he doesn't want to be found out that he's committing incest with his sister. And he sets up Ned Stark, wounds him, and then has him captured when they're in King's Landing. So he plays a large part in Ned Stark's demise. Yeah. He kills in jumping into last season.
He kills his own cousin. Yeah. Right. To escape.
So, and the reason why I say play devil's advocate is that I feel like, and I'm so conflicted watching this scene. I probably was the first time, but definitely this time, I'm watching it and I go, damn, like you're right. I feel bad for Jaime.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I go,
but look at all the other stuff.
Does he deserve this? Yeah, like look at what he's done.
Yeah.
He's done some horrible shit. He technically getting your face kicked in the mud and your hand cut off, that's light. He's getting off light for all the shit that he's done. But at the same time, like I said, it goes back to the writing of the show. It goes back to the characters that, you know, so I guess it speaks to like the type of person you are, that you could still be empathetic towards someone who is not a good person.
Absolutely.
But it just speaks volumes about the pedigree of the program, that, you know, we can have these conflicting emotions. It's not just, this is your bad guy, he's being a villain, so it's cut and dry. I know I'm not supposed to like that guy. I know I'm supposed to like this person because he's a good guy. End of the story. Yeah,
there's no lines drawn in the sand when it comes to these characters, because it kind of flip-flops, and there's a lot of gray area here, and we're starting to see that the further along we get in this series. And again, like we say, a testament to what, like we talked to at the beginning about the director being able to direct, and especially with this opening, to be able to really kind of sympathize with that character in that moment, knowing everything that he's done previously in the last 2 seasons. Let's jump to Varys telling the story about the sorcerer and how he became a eunuch. Yeah. Now, I got a little distracted, so I'll let you talk a little bit about this, but I did kind of get a little bit of what Varys was saying, and he kind of has this crater that he's opening up, and we come to discover that the sorcerer that he's telling the story to Tyrion, he has trapped in this crater. Crate. A crater?
Crater is like a hole left in the ground when something large makes a huge impact. Yeah, he was opening a box.
A box, yeah. It's late.
What's tired. In the box?
What's in the box?
Stop.
But I'll let you speak on that. So Varys is kind of telling this story, and I found it to be interesting because we haven't heard this yet in the series.
It's been alluded to at the very least twice previously. He's mentioned to Tyrion, "Do you want to hear the story about what happened to me?" Either Tyrion's like no, or something always happens that he never gets to tell that story. It's funny. So he tells a story about what happened to him and how he was cut, and then he opens the crate and reveals that the sorcerer's inside. Before I talk about my thoughts on what that scene meant, I'm curious as to what your reaction to that meant. Like, what were you thrown off about?
I don't know. I understood that was the sorcerer, but I wasn't really following his story as far as like when he was saying like when this happened, or I thought he was saying the sorcerer was the person that came to save him from the person that mutilated him.
There was no saving
when he was a child, so I was getting a little confused on his story.
So the story was when he was a young boy, he used to travel with this group of actors. They went to this place called Mirrors, and there was a guy who offered the leader of the troupe of actors a substantial amount of money for Varys, and Varys was under the assumption that, okay, well, I heard about this guy doing stuff to young boys, so he thought that he was going to be sold to him for sex, right? But Varys says the guy did something even worse. He gave him this potion that's prevented him from moving, but did nothing to dull his senses. So while he was paralyzed, he castrated Varys and just tossed him out. And the story Varys was telling Tyrion is that because Tyrion comes into the room and he's like, yo, is this a good time or not? I need to know, how much information do you know about Cersei trying to have me killed during the Battle of Blackwater? I need proof because I want revenge. And Varys starts, before he answers Tyrion's question, he says, you know, I was going to tell you about what happened to me. Do you want to hear the story? Tyrion's like, look, whatever. I just need to know what's going on with Cersei. I need proof because I want revenge. I know who tried to kill me, and I need get back. So the whole point of Varys' story was he was telling Tyrion, like, I understand that, but you got to be patient. If you're patient, there's a payoff to it. And so then he goes into the story about how he was cut. When I was a little boy, I was paralyzed, castrated, thrown out. I was left on the streets, and to make my way, I did whatever I could. I stole. I sold the rest of my body to, just to survive. And in doing that, I realized that the content of a man's letters are more valuable than the contents of his purse. So that's where he learned to spy and get information and gather information and use that as power. But he said that he was doing that. He said when he got thrown out, he decided to live in spite of the sorcerer who cut him. Right. And he said that, you know, crawling and clawing his way up from the slums of Mears to being on the council in King's Landing. It took a long time. But with that time and that patience, he amassed information, spies, and with that information, because the contents of the letter are more valuable than money, that's power and influence. And he said because of his influence, he was able to pop open that crate, and I got the motherfucker that did this to me, and now I can get my revenge. So what I'm saying to you, Tyrion, is chill. In due time, if you play your cards right, you can get the revenge you want the right way.
Interesting. Oh, okay.
So
so him telling the story is the same. Is him basically telling Tyrion, like, look, be patient and your revenge will come. That makes sense. I like that. Like, looking at it now, I like the way that plays out. I like the way that plays out. Let's stick with Varys. Him talking with Rose. In the
Tyrell. I love them two together. Oh no, that's right.
Well, Varys got a lot of scenes, but in the brothel with
you're right, Rose. She's because as at this point she's in his employ. She's one of his spies. Yeah, and she is. Well,
he said because Littlefinger's about to leave to go to the Eyrie. Right. Yeah, and so he's trying to get information, I guess, about Littlefinger, as far as...
And it just updates, you know, what he's doing. And she tells him that he's about to go to the Eyrie so he can get Arya's hand in marriage, and so he can be ruler of the Vale and get an army. And then...
We're talking about Sansa.
She says Varys remarks that, oh damn, so he's just lost interest in Sansa. Yeah. And Rose goes, I don't think so. And he goes, what makes you think that? She pulls out the manifest for the trip that's about to happen, all the inventory on the boat, and she remarks that I noticed there's 2 beds on this list.
Yeah, feather beds.
And so, you know, indicating that Peter Baelish is intending to leave, but he has a bed also, and that bed is also for Sansa, so he's going to smuggle her out.
Yeah, and then also trying to figure out what Littlefinger's, some of his ulterior motives, because whatever happens to Robb Stark in the war, you know, some of that stuff will ultimately go to Sansa, and if he can get in good with Sansa, because he was mentioning how also Littlefinger came from nothing. He had no army, no wealth, and something else. And he was like, he's already gotten 2 of those. And so just seeing how Littlefinger is kind of manipulating this whole situation to kind of get in where he can kind of become Lord and become King if he gets in good with the Starks. So yeah, I thought that was interesting with Varys. Now in the Sept, the scene with Cersei and Olenna and Marjorie and Joffrey. And again, just going to, I think we're going to get to a scene with Cersei and Tywin when they're having their little meeting, which, I don't know, Tywin is an interesting character. But before we get there, Cersei is seeing how Marjorie is influencing Joffrey, and then the conversation that she's having with Olenna about, you know, being a mother and wanting to protect your sons and, you know, keep them safe and keep them alive. I don't know, I just thought that was interesting. And then of course Joffrey is just, he's a kid and he's loving seeing like all the dead Targaryens and their tombs and telling all these different stories to Marjorie, and Marjorie is just kind of eating it up, kind of feeding into his ego and stuff like that. So I don't know, I just thought that was an interesting scene to see how all this manipulation to a certain degree is kind of playing out between these 2 houses. And
it's not even that she's really doing anything malevolent. Like, all of it really is benign, but it's all beneficial to both. It's beneficial to all parties involved, so to speak, because at the end of that, towards the tail end of that scene, they're in there and they can hear the crowd, they can hear the people in King's Landing outside.
Yeah.
And so Marjorie was like, should we go see them? Like, yo, you need to, don't be afraid of them. They love you. I know how they feel. You're their king. You led the victory at Blackwater. So of course Joffrey he's hesitant because his last experience with the people, that shit didn't go well.
Yeah.
And
even Cersei is like, wait, don't go out there.
And so they go out there and stand amongst the people, and firstly they're chanting Marjorie's name, and she's waving, she's putting on face, and she's smiling, and then they're chanting Joffrey's name, and he's taken aback by that. Like, hold up, they ain't throwing shit at me.
I know.
They like me. So he puts his hand up, and they're like, yay. So he's like, okay.
I know.
And then we cut to Cersei, and she sees that, oh shit, like she's gotten them to do and him to do what I couldn't influence him to do.
Exactly.
And she's seeing that, already before this even happened, I was remarking in videos previously where I thought it was funny that here's Cersei, that she has this monster that she just can't control. And here comes Marjorie, and she's doing it with such a deft hand.
Yeah, with so much ease.
With ease, and Cersei does not like that at all.
Not at all. Not at all. Let's jump a little bit to Theon, the scene with him, and when this is a scene that I kind of mentioned because I remember when he's with Ramsay and they're talking. Theon is basically talking. He has regret about some of the choices that he's made, as far as taking over Winterfell, killing the 2 orphan boys that were being seen over by the farmer, and all these different things. And you really see that Theon has this moment of reflection and moment of vulnerability. And I remember watching this for the first time, really feeling, just in the same way that we talked about Jaime, really feeling for Theon in this moment, and really feeling like, okay, I thought at this moment Ramsay was the guy that was saving him, and I felt, all right, he's got this moment of regret. Like, Theon is going to get back. He's going to get back to where he was before, and he's recognizing that Stark has his one true father because he's been trying to get the acceptance of his own father, Balon Greyjoy, and then all of a sudden we get that reveal that Ramsay brought him back to where he was, and he's recaptured and imprisoned again.
Before we talk about that, when you first watched this, because in this scene, this is the first admission and confirmation that those bodies that were burned and hung in Winterfell were not
Bran and Rickon.
Right. Yeah. So I found that like you said, he was being very vulnerable there for him to admit that to Ramsay. And I'm trying to remember, does that admission come back to bite Theon in the ass? Because he told everybody else, he told his father and whatever else that he killed, he found them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that piece of information is something that Ramsay could use to even further, implicate Theon and get him in even more trouble. Possibly.
I don't know if that came back in any way, because at this point he's going to get tortured by Ramsay, and then he's going to become Reek.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so I don't know if that point is ever going to come back as far as with Balon or with Yara.
But speaking of the directing again, but this scene and how the build up to the reveal of, oh shit, I'm just bringing you back to the dungeons, and how he played it, I thought that was really good too. And then the way that moment is shot with Theon from behind the bars, for that profile shot, and I thought that was really moving.
Yeah, it really was. It was a great scene for Alfie Allen. He was really good playing that character. What I have next? Oh, the campfire with Jaime and Brienne. So Jaime is just like in a bad place where he's just like, look, I just want to die, and Brienne is like, look, like you lost your hand, and it's like you're acting like a girl. And but I like this scene between the two of them because, again, just kind of establishing and reaffirming and building on this relationship that we know of the two of them now. I don't know. I just really thought that was a really good scene.
I like that she said, "I'm sorry that you were. I'm sorry that you were introduced to the real world for a moment where people lose things all the time. Like,
great.
Like you lost your hand. Okay, that's fucked up. But like you do know you live in a world where people lose way worse, like all the time. Like there's certain people who just don't have shit.
Yeah.
Like stop crying. I like that moment that and basically through her, her talking to him in that way, she kind of brings him back to life, so to speak, because he's just ready to quit.
Yeah, he's about to just give up.
Yeah.
So she does kind of breathe life back into him to try to get him to kind of forge forward and move on. So I really like that between the two of them. Cersei and Tywin talking about the Tyrells. So this almost kind of reminded me a little bit, not so much, but just the simple fact of the conversation that Tyrion had with Tywin. And it's just interesting to see Tywin and how he is towards his children. And Cersei says a line to him where it's like, you love your legacy more than you actually, you love the legacy of the family more than you actually love your own children. And you can definitely see that. And just his demeanor and his attitude towards Cersei, it's almost like, he's bothering her, like why are you here? And he's like, look, I need to talk to you about the Tyrells. I think that they're manipulating Joffrey, and I just don't think they're good. He's like, look, they're the ones that saved that won the war from Stannis Baratheon. So I don't know. I just thought that was an interesting scene, and also just Cersei telling Tywin, like, look, you put all this into your sons, and you ever think that your daughter, who has studied the family, who has done all these different things,
who's listened to what you said,
exactly, could be the one that could help you and be beneficial to you. So I don't know. It was just interesting to kind of see Cersei almost kind of taken back and kind of put in that role where she doesn't really have the power or the control that we've seen throughout the season, like the scenes with Baelish and last season. It's like now, like when she gets in front of Daddy, she kind of cowers back, and it's hard for her to kind of. I just thought that was interesting to see that dynamic. What else we got? Varys and Olenna in the garden.
That was a great scene.
That was good.
Like just their rapport, just the writing for this particular scene between the two characters, I really enjoyed too. Yeah.
And so they're talking about Sansa again, and I think they were also talking about Baelish. I think going more so, I think I may have got those confused a little bit as far as the conversation that Varys was having with Rose in the brothel, but I think a lot of stuff that he was saying about Baelish and Sansa, he was telling Olenna as well when they were talking in the garden. But I thought that was a really good scene between the two of them. And I love seeing the character of Lady Olenna, because like you said, she's just kind of like this no nonsense, tell it straight how it is. And like when Varys comes there, like she just tells it to him straight. So I really like a lot of that stuff with her. Marjorie and Sansa, I wasn't going to put this note in, but I see like how she the way she kind of butters Sansa up a little bit to kind of put that proposal in front of her as far as her marrying her brother, Sir Loras. It's like, oh, we could be sisters. Like, I like you. We could be friends. And they're having this little banter back and forth. This whole funny thing about her sister or her friend back home in Highgarden, and said that she had some type of disease. I forget what it was called. Porridge pox. And ends up being a joke. So it's just kind of showing them kind of being, really girly with each other. But, of course, Marjorie is always plotting and thinking and planning. And there's always some type of motive behind that. And so when she says that, Sansa is kind of responsive to that, which I found to be a little shocking.
But you know what though? Like, and the crazy part is, like, if it's not even a raw deal for Sansa if she take that though.
It wouldn't.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
it wouldn't be.
It's that's the interesting thing about Marjorie. Like, again, her her choices and her actions,
they're not malicious.
They're not. They don't come across as malicious.
Nah, in any way. I mean, yeah, she's kind of doing some of the same things that Cersei is doing as far as like how she plays the game, but it's never to hurt anybody. You know what I'm saying? It's always
and ultimately it's to get her on the throne so she can be the queen. But
exactly.
Once she becomes the queen, I don't get the sense that she'd be the type of queen that Cersei would be, or you know, someone else would be. Like I genuinely feel like the way that she treats the people, like when she in the previous episode when she got out and she was down there talking to the peasants and all that, and then how they were receptive to her in this particular episode. I genuinely feel like that's how she'd rule. She
would rule. Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way, and it comes across that, and her performance comes across when she plays that as Marjorie. And I think it's fantastic because you don't see those nuances of something more devious behind her.
But character. I will say though, on initial watch, let me ask you: did you feel that way on initial watch, or because for me, I think I was still skeptical because you gotta think like in this, but you can't trust.
That's what I'm saying. You can't trust anybody. So anybody can put on a face, save face, and you never know what their motives are at the end. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I think my initial watch, I was always skeptical of her. Like, I still don't trust her Sansa. I don't know if that's a good idea. But now, having seen the show played out, it turns out like she was just a nice person playing the fucking game, and she just lost.
Absolutely. Let's get to the scene with the crows. I have the crows turn on Mormont, and they kill Craster.
That, like Anchorman, that shit got escalated real fast. I didn't remember this going down like that.
I didn't either.
In the middle of the episode.
We talked about this beforehand, because we were thinking, like, does Mormont die? Because I was mentioning, like, was Mormont there when Jon Snow got stabbed? That was like in season 5. Like, Mormont didn't make it out this episode. I was like, oh, okay, well, that clears that up.
It's funny because prior to this scene, they were having a funeral scene, a burial scene
for one of the crows.
A ceremony for one of the crows died, and it wasn't even like he just died unceremoniously. He had a broken foot, and then Craster ended up being an asshole and starving everybody. So it wasn't like he died in battle.
Yeah.
So during that ceremony, they speak the title of the show. And his watch has ended, and I was like, "This is the reason why this episode is named that." But it turns out
it makes a lot of sense.
It goes more towards Mormont's, and I want to say.
So it looks like the crows. And they're a little fed up with Craster. Like I said, he's been starving them, and homeboy from Pacific Rim.
Yeah, got leaked.
Yeah, he's like, look, man, he's a little combative towards Craster, and Craster has kind of made it known. And it's so funny watching this because I was thinking this as I was watching it. I was like, Craster is like the only dude outside of all the women there, and you got all these crows. They outnumber him. Like, why don't they just fucking just
kill that dude?
Yeah. I literally was thinking that as that was happening. And I was like, well, yeah. And then Pacific Rim dude steps up. I was like, okay, maybe he's thinking what I'm thinking. It's like, look, let's just kill this dude. Like, how is he controlling like all the resources, all the food, all the water for us not to eat just to stay in his place?
But you know, I think it goes to, so you have to think of the Night's Watch as like the military, the army. You know what I'm saying? So when I'm in country over in Afghanistan and we go to a village and they allow us in their village, which they do, like I've done that. Like the head of that village will allow us into that village, and we'll spend the night there. They'll feed us, and then in the morning they'll have political meetings and shit like that, right? You want
to be respectful of that.
You want to be respectful of that. If they say, we're not going to feed you, or, this meeting went sour, granted, we have all the military might. We roll up in there in Humvees with 40 cows on there, 50 cows, 40 might.
Yeah.
We're outgun them and outman them like by a wide margin. So if things don't go our way, if we wanted to, we could be like, yo, you ain't feeding us, and we can light the place up, but we can't. Because of who we are and what we stand for, we can't do that. And I feel like maybe that's the reason. I want to say, because you got to think, the Night's Watch, you know, look how beholden to that oath they are. So there's a sense of honor with them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, so I think that's what...
It seems like they got pushed to that point.
Well, you're starving people. You know what I'm saying? You're starving people. On top of the crazy shit that they just seen, they're trying to get back home because they got to prep for that shit. So, you know, like you said, you push them to the brink and they reach their breaking point.
Yeah. And then so they turn, they kill Craster in a pretty horrific way right up here.
Yeah, he needed that shit.
Yeah, he did. But then they turn on Mormont, and he gets killed.
I forgot. I forgot that he dies in this scene.
Yeah, me too. I completely forgot about that, and so it's a bit sad. And he doesn't. I don't want to say he doesn't get a satisfying death or a satisfying ending, but I mean that just goes to. I mean, a lot of people don't get that, and I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense, but it was just sad. It's sad to see that, especially him being the Lord Commander, especially everything that he did for Jon Snow and the conversations that they had, especially in the last season.
That's like the sticking point for me. Is like, yo, Jon Snow, your meal ticket just got killed.
Yeah, I know.
You know what I'm saying? Because like, when he goes back to the wall. And I remarked about that before we started watching the show, because I was trying to remember, like you said, like when does he die? Does he make it back to the wall with him? Yeah. Because I remember once Jon Snow goes back, that other dude that's there, that's always an asshole to everybody. I don't remember Mormont being there, because shit gets crazy when they go back. Because Mormont was always that buffer.
Between the two, yeah.
Right.
He was.
So now Jon Snow doesn't have that.
Yeah.
And he's coming back and you know, probably going to be accused of being a wildling or a traitor, because that plan was only between him
and Corn.
Right. So yeah, shit's going to get bad for him.
So let's pick up with the Brotherhood without banners when they go into that little cave, and we get introduced to that character. I now remember his name, Beric Dondarrion. And so they're talking to the Hound, who they have tied up, and they're basically there's a trial by combat. Because of the murders that the Hound is accused of. And he's saying, like, look, you know, I'm from the House of Clegane, and a lot of these murders were done by my brother, the Mountain. And
he's saying all of them.
Well, all of them are done. And then Arya steps up and said, well, look, you killed the butcher's boy, but those were orders from Joffrey. And so they're saying, okay, now you're going to be, killed, trial by combat. And Beric says, well, the Hound says, well, who is it going to be amongst you? You know, is it going to be Thoros? Is it going to be the girl? You know, they kind of laugh, but Beric is like, he's like, hey, it could, you know, she could, you know, it could be Arya, but he's like, no, you're going to fight me.
Oh shit! Remember when I asked you that one episode? I was like, yo, do you think the shit with the red woman is her own witchcraft? There's no such thing as Lord of the Light, because I don't know if the Lord of the Light shit comes up after Stannis dies. I remember now that Beric is introduced.
So yeah,
because in this scene he says he also worships the one true God. Yeah, but the way that he does it is more of a just and noble way. Like he only goes after people who prey on the innocent and the weak. Like he's not about burning people who don't believe, like, you know, servants of the darkness. He's not tripping like the red woman is. And I know in the later seasons somebody dies and he brings them back using some kind of power or magic, and because he's a servant of the Lord of the Light, I want to say that has something to do with that. I'm not saying that he's like the true king with it, but I'm just saying, because I just was remarking, like, remember I was asking, like, is that just mumbo jumbo she's talking that she's just, you know, using to dress up her witchcraft, or is that a real thing? But apparently it is, because he's also a worshiper of it. But I remember some magic shit going down with that character, like in season 7.
Yeah. I mean, well, he's part of the people that went beyond the wall to fight against.
Because he's gonna bring somebody's gonna get wounded. He's gonna bring him back to life.
I think so.
It might be your boy.
Not Gendry.
Tormund.
No, I can't remember exactly what happened, But I do remember they went beyond.
And he brings somebody back to life.
Yeah. No, I do. Yeah, because that character, he was real prominent. Because I do remember that he does worship the Lord of the Light. But you're right. He does it in a different way than the way Melisandre does it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see more of that character and just more from the Brotherhood without banners.
The thing that stuck out to me the most about this scene, though, is it seems to establish that the Hound isn't who you necessarily would have perceived him to be, because he's accused of. Yeah, so the Cleganes, the mountain really is the monster, not just because of stature, but the Hound is being accused of killing women, cutting babies in half while they're in front of their mothers, and killing children. And he's saying, look, I wasn't there. This battle that you're talking about, this massacre you're talking about, I wasn't there. That wasn't me. It was my fucking brother and these other people. He's like, just because I got the last name doesn't make me guilty of their crimes. Exactly. Is being born Clegane a crime? And so you can tell that he's not lying. He doesn't come across. He's not someone that'll lie. No, if he kills somebody, he'll take credit for the shit, because he took credit for killing the 12-year-old boy.
Exactly.
So I think this scene really establishes that the Hound is not the monster that we thought him to be. Maybe he's a monster, but he ain't the monster that we thought him to be.
Exactly. And we've seen that a little bit throughout the series, especially last season with just all the stuff with Sansa and even the stuff leading up to right before he left King's Landing. We see a lot of that in the series, but of course these other characters don't know that about him.
Right.
Last scene, man. Dany. So this right here is my favorite Daenerys Stormborn moment. So we've been kind of building to this for a while. So I got his name. I think it's Lord Krasnus. And he's the guy that's selling this unsullied army to Daenerys.
He looked like a skinny, like slim
Montel Williams.
Montel Williams and Ben Kingsley. Like
I can see Ben Kingsley. Yeah.
Trevor Slater.
If you spray tan him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. Lord Krasnus, who from Astapor, is selling. So they made the deal to trade the army for one of the dragons. So we get to the point where they're outside. They're in the courtyard where the whole unsullied army is, and Daenerys has her dragon in like a little cage, and she's like, look, crate, a cage, little like bird, little dragon. I'm calling it dragon cage.
Yeah.
There you go. Not the bird cage, the dragon cage. So she opens that up, and she has the dragon chained to his leg, and so she pulls the dragon out, and she walks toward Krasnus and gives him the dragon, and he's like trying to hold the shit, and he's like, whoa, he's like, hey, I can't control this thing here, and so she's like, and there's
he hands her the whip,
the whip. That basically gives her control of the army, and this whip is also a great symbol. It has great symbolism that we'll see at the end of the scene, where she asked him, he's like, "Is it done?" He was like, yeah, you now have control of the unsullied army. Our deal has been made. I have your dragon. You have my army. You guys are good to go. So she goes out there and she goes to her army, and then she starts to speak in Valyrian. And, he doesn't notice it at first, but then she turns and then she starts to speak to Krasnus in Valyrian. And she states that, look, Valyrian was the natural language of my mother. And so she starts to command the Unsullied army to basically attack anybody that that has enslaved you, that has these whips. I can't remember exactly what she was saying, but she was like, yeah, it's like, I command you to go ahead and kill the people that have enslaved you. And so she does that, And then she looks back at Kraznys and he's trying to control the dragon, and like it's just a badass shot. Just oh man, just the depth of field and how it just pulls into Daenerys, and she looks and she says the line. She says Dracarys, and then the dragon just spits that hot fire. And Kraznys just turns to barbecue. Oh man. I don't know, man. Like, for me, watching this scene for the first time, like, again, this was built up over a couple of episodes, and I knew that Dany understood what Kraznys was saying, even though it was being translated by Missandei. And I don't know, just something about it, but they never let on that she knew. But I was just like, nah, man, she knows what the fuck is going on. And you see how that all plays out in this last scene. And man, that dude gets his comeuppance in such a good way. But the thing that I loved about this moment, and it had me fist bumping the first time I saw it, even now when I saw it, is the fact that I'm looking at Dany from the first season, how she was treated. And you mentioned this in the last episode as far as like, you know, her making the decision to make that bargain with Kraznys. But just a simple fact that from the beginning, being sold to the Dothraki, the way that her brother has always treated her, like she's always just been this girl that she's herself has felt enslaved. And this is the first time in this moment in season 3 that we've seen her come into her true leadership, her true power, and to see that played out. And I just thought that I was like, all right, this is the beginning. For me, this is the beginning of the Dany that we see now. And I just thought it was just fucking fantastic. I love this scene. I just thought it was just a great standing moment for her. As a character, man.
And again, going back to the direction, like the way that it was shot, like the dragons fucking flying around, setting motherfuckers on top of the wall on fire.
Yeah.
And then once the smoke clears, there's a shot of, it's from Jorah's perspective. He's looking up at her. She's backlit by the sunlight, and you basically just see her silhouette.
Yeah.
And then it, you know, firstly Jorah and what's your other man's name?
Selmy.
Selmy, their reaction, you know, Jorah realized, all right, okay, you knew what you was doing. You could have told me, but you knew what you was doing. My bad. You got it. I stay in my lane. I ain't gonna say shit. I'm back in the friend zone. And then they cut to the army marching out, and just the way that was shot, like with the sunset, and you had parallax layers of soldiers in the foreground and the background. The color palette and all of it. And then they cut to that over the aerial shot, the wide shot of the army leaving, and then 3 dragons flying. That was a pretty badass.
I love that. And then the symbolism, because she says before they leave, she's like, look, now that I have control of this army, she was like, look, you all are free men. And if you all can decide, if you want to leave, there'll be no consequences. There'll be no repercussions for it. I give you the honor to go ahead and leave and live a free life. But if you want to stay with me, then we can fight this war together. And then like, you were just waiting to see what's happening, and you see all 8,000 Unsullied, you know, they start stomping their staves, and they're all in unison to fight for Daenerys as free men. And I thought that was just such a great moment. And then she takes that whip and she just throws it to the ground, and then you see like the Unsullied walking over it, and just the symbolism of that I just thought was just absolutely fantastic. And I remember just watching it for the first time, I was just like, man, the way she handled that scene and that final shot, seeing all those thousands of Unsullied army and those 3 dragons all just in unison walking, following Dany, I was just like, oh my God. Because I was literally just thinking, wow, she has fucking come a long way. And this is only season 3. She's come a long way. And I was just, and this is why, like, I love following her story. Why I was telling you, like, when I binged it, I was like, yo, Dany, like, her story is the best. Like, I loved everything I was seeing from her, man. And this just capitalized on that, man. I just fucking loved it. I just thought, oh man. Danny's got a couple other great scenes in this in this series, man. But this one for me was it. So yeah, man. I love it. Anyway, that's how the episode ended. What we have here, and now his watch is ended. Directed by Alex Graves. I was joking. I was saying this episode should have been called Dracarys. I should have worn my Dracarys shirt.
Fail.
Damn, man.
Fail.
And I got the Mortal Kombat though.
The fuck they got to do with Game of Thrones?
Got the Mortal Kombat gorillas. It's combat days.
That has nothing to do with Game of Thrones. I got the white T-shirt because winter is coming. The White Walker, you know.
This was just the next shirt in my pile that I go through.
Oh, this is just what I wore to work today.
Lucky you. God damn. Anyway, let us know what you thought of this episode 4 for season 3 in the comments below. Remember to rate, like, subscribe, and share. And go ahead and check out our other dorks at MouthDork, at WB Dash, and at Sidewalk Siren. This guy here is the Disco Dork. I am the Turtle Dork, and with that, we're out.